Hello and welcome to the Monday, January 10th, 2011 City Council Informational Meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with our City Council staff report from Deborah A. Owens, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations. Deborah?
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of things to let you know about the 7 o'clock agenda tonight. Of course, there's only one item to be voted on that's calendared now, which is a second reading. But there will be some items that will be walked in tonight with Council's help. One has to do with a resolution honoring the memory of Donald Skatson, or Don Skatson. And then there are two more items that will pertain to the consume but not sell liquor events at the Washington Pavilion. So the information's in your red notes to adopt those tonight, but just to let you know that we'll need to take a special care as we go to adopt the regular agenda. We'll need to amend it to add those items. Thank you.
Any questions for Deborah? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our Fiscal Committee meeting. Councilor Brown.
We had a good discussion last week regarding contracts that the council sees or does not see. I would encourage those of you who were in attendance that aren't on the Fiscal Committee or that couldn't attend to communicate with the Fiscal Committee about what you'd like to see as we examine where we're going with this. And it may result in no change, but we want to hear your thoughts. And Councilor Entenmann was there. Thank you for being there last week and shared his thoughts, but we'd like to hear from more of you.
Any questions for Councilor Brown on contracts? Michelle, you were late. Could you just tell us where you were at?
I did call ahead. I was using my mother's advice and driving slowly.
All right, thank you. All right, item 4 is the City Council open discussion. Anybody have anything they'd like to talk about? You might approach with caution on this topic, but all right. While you
I would
go
take
through
a moment.
Councilor Brown.
I want to congratulate the mayor on a brilliant choice for finance director. I'm very pleased with Tracy Turback from Watertown. I've known Tracy for 4 or 5 years now, serving with him in South Dakota Municipal League. In fact, he has followed me as chair, and he's a very solid individual. And I think you will all be pleased. Our finances will be in very good hands with Tracy at the helm. So congratulations, Mayor.
Very good. Does everybody know the process for once the mayor has appointed somebody like that and then we do the consent? Maybe, Deborah, could you just refresh our memory?
Sure, and I think it was even in the press release by Mayor Huther's office, but there'll be advice and consent of the council once appointed by the mayor. I think that will be for the 18th of January, according to the press release. And I, too, I know Mr. Turbeck. He's just phenomenal, so thank you. Wonderful man.
Councilor Entenmann, did you find your note?
Yes, I did. Recently, there was a press release that was sent out by the CVB on January 5th for the citizens out there if they weren't aware of it. But the 2010 shows strong increase in visitors to Falls Park. The numbers seem to be up. We had about 177,000 visitors in 2010 compared to 09. We had about 158,000 visitors. So the visitors are a lot stronger. And for information, we have a guest book, and we had visitors from all 50 states and 57 foreign countries. The top 10 states that visited our Falls Visitor Center was Minnesota, was number 1, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Illinois, Missouri, California, Michigan, and Texas. And from countries, we had people visiting from Canada, Germany, United Kingdom, Australia, Norway, Netherlands, Brazil, France, Italy, and Sweden. Those were the top 10 countries. So the visitors are up at Falls Park, and hopefully it's a good sign of the tourism business and the visitor business of the city of Sioux Falls as we go forward.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Brown.
I have one other question, and maybe I just missed it, but I don't remember the council ever being briefed on the court case involving the snowplow drivers. Did I miss that?
I don't remember it either.
I would respectfully ask that the council not have to read about those kind of issues in the newspaper first.
Okay. Councilor Aguilar? Did you have something you wanted to add? Or
That would be-
Councilor Urban, good night. I was looking at Sue. I was going to ask Sue.
I know I was late, but cut me some slack. I just wanted to bring up a really cool thing that's happening. It hasn't happened since 2000. The Parks and Rec Department is doing a survey on, maybe you talked about this earlier before I was here, but doing a survey on the recreational needs assessment in the community, and they have two small focus groups that they're working with Thursday and Friday. But then there's also a public meeting on Thursday night at 8 o'clock, January 13th. It'll be in the conference room A at the main library on North Dakota Avenue. And anyone who's interested in recreational opportunities or the things that are happening in our parks in Sioux Falls should attend that again. It's Thursday night at 8 o'clock in the main library, and I'd invite you to be there.
Okay, very good. Oh,
That's how awesome it is.
Dave Heifley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Brown, if you want some further update as far as the snowplow driver's grievance issue, Gail Eastland of our office is here, and she has been handling that issue throughout. I know it's been going through. It actually started under Mayor Munson, and I personally was not aware that council had not been briefed on that case before, and if they were not, I'm sorry that happened, but that was under Mayor Munson where that would have initially started.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And I would just ask that we probably know what we need to know as of today, but I would ask that going forward we'd be apprised of those.
Okay, very good. Any other topics? Any other comments, discussion? I won't add any. We'll move on to our presentations today. We'll start off. We've got two presentations. One is the Event Center update, and the second is a recreation needs assessment process. We'll start off with the Event Center update with the mayor or Mark Cotter, whoever. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. City Council, Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. I will start the presentation today, give you a brief update on what's happened with the A&E selection and the constructor. Mike Cooper will then follow up with the economic analysis, and then summary will be Mayor Huther. All right, today is our monthly update from the Event Center, and you'll find that this is a fairly brief update today. We're in the midst of selection and negotiation, and so February will certainly be much more entailed and much more details to come. Well, let's recap the architect and engineer schedule. We started this process back on October 15th and have gone through the selection. Initially, we were hopeful that we would have a notice to proceed by January 3rd. Notably, now we've learned some things that we were probably a little bit aggressive, and so right now we're on track with this Friday, which will be January 14th. And at that point, that will set forth the contract, and we'll initially focus on phase one, which is the comparative analysis of the Arena Convention Center site and then a downtown site. As you know, the selected team is Sink Combs Deflis out of Denver, Colorado, and Koch Hazard Architects, local here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We'll start with a series of project meetings to really refine a good project plan, and then again, really start to hone in on all the factors and all those matrix boxes that we need to fill in for the comparative analysis. And so much is to come on the work to get started. Again, our goal is to get them under contract by this Friday, and so much more to come. All right. Construction manager at risk. This process is moving forward as well, but I have redlined some date changes in the schedule. As we proceed, when we came out of the short list with the three firms, when we did our best to coordinate those interviews, the best day that worked for all three of them, so we can do them in the same day as on the 19th. So there's a week difference there. But they are scheduled for next week, and so those interviews will get conducted on January 19th. Our goal would be to make the selection by the end of that week. And then following that, we've also learned that these are very detailed contracts. So I would just expect that we will not hit the January 26th deadline, But I don't want to speculate on a date yet until we actually make the selection and sit down with legal to make sure we can get a very good contract. And then I'll update you on the anticipated notice to proceed. Just to recap, the three teams that have been selected to come forward for interviews on the 19th: Hunt Construction out of Indianapolis, Indiana, has teamed locally with Fegan Construction of Sioux Falls, Mortensen Construction out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then Sioux Falls Construction and Henry Carlson Joint Venture out of Sioux Falls. Again, those interviews are set for next week, January 19th. Okay, first time we've really tried to start to break down the $500,000 with of authority. We initially approached this with $400,000 for the architect and engineer, knowing that we're going to need a lot of information from that team to do. Construction manager at risk, again, having them be with us at the beginning to do the value engineering, system analysis, and then ultimately developing the cost for the project, and then the economic development and impact analysis at $30,000 for $500,000. Okay, we're still managing against the $500,000, but we have learned that these contracts are very involved, and we want to make sure that we have very solid contracts. And one of the things that's important is that even though we're only contracting on the architect and engineer for phase 1 and 2, which is the comparative analysis and then the schematic design, we've been advised that it's very important to get at least the base contract information. If the voters move this project forward, the base contract will have provisions in it for phase 3, if you will. And so one of the things we've done is we've sat down with St. Combs Def List. We've reduced that scope from $400,000 down to $340,000, still wanting to make sure that we can achieve what we need to make sure we have a very good comparative analysis and schematic design. But we want to make sure that those base contracts are solid, so we've brought in Tegra Group, their contract advisors, and then we are working with David and his team to contract with an attorney to make sure that, again, these contracts are solid on both items. The construction manager at risk is still at $70,000 and will be, and the economic development and impact analysis is at $30,000. Now, just again, as we learn, we are starting to identify some potential additional costs that are footnoted on the bottom, which could be travel to similar facilities, additional legal, and specialty consultants like naming rights and financial and funding consultants. So at this point, don't have any. We don't have anything of what those values may be or timing, but just wanted to start to footnote them. One of the comments I wanted to say is the Tegra Group, one of the partners, grew up north of Brookings. They are out of Minneapolis. They are expert practitioners in getting business language in these contracts, and then we'll back that up with a good local attorney to make sure that we shift the risk in the appropriate places and have good contracts if this goes to phase 3. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Cooper.
Good afternoon, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Just to give you a brief update of where we're at with the economic and development impact analysis. And we, at this point, have not wavered from the timeline that we did present to you last month. The RFP for this study was issued on December 17th with a deadline for questions from various consulting teams for December 30th. The proposals are still due this week of January 14th. And based on the inquiries that we've had, we do expect that we'll have multiple proposals for consideration. We are still looking at the goal of January 21st to select the firms that would be interviewed, to shortlist those. And then the rest of the dates are still tentative, depending on people's schedules. But January 26th through 28th, we've set aside as potential days to do the interviews. And then approximately by the end of the month, we would issue a notice of intent to award a contract. And then by mid-February approximately, there would be a city-issued contract. And again, we've looked at the timeline for this process to be approximately 60 days. And the key thing will be, once we've selected a firm and we've finalized the contract, that we want to coordinate the timeline with our AE consultant, because a key part of this process of doing the economic and development impact analysis will be having two final sites to compare. We still have the evaluation team made up of 4 city people and 4 outside people. And again, we believe that we have a good variety of team members that bring to the table different backgrounds. And we think this will be a good group that will help us evaluate the various proposals for a final recommendation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Huther.
As all of you can probably tell, this one probably isn't as dynamic and as exciting as the prior ones. But we're still making progress, and I think that that's the important thing to remember. We're involved in some selections. These selections are absolutely critical to having us do this thing correctly, whether it be the architect and the engineer, whether it be the construction manager at risk, or whether it be that team that determines the economic impact of the city. We are diligently attacking that to find these right people. The contracts are also important, and yes, we are learning as we go when it comes to these contracts. Our initial thought was to rely on our city attorney and the team to work on that. But as we got more and more involved in this, we realized, you know what, there is so much riding on this. Not only so much opportunity, but there's also risk involved when you talk about a project of this magnitude, that we did want to leverage some outside resources as well. And that's why we ultimately decided to make the investment into a more specific legal team to help us with that. And I think that's important, that we need to protect the best interests of our city. When we're going to invest $100 million, one mistake could cost the city millions. And so we wanted to protect the interests of the city, and we believe that with the help of these legal firms, we'll be able to do just that. We are learning as we go. Again, we haven't built a facility like this for a long, long time, and we're going to continue to learn. We're going to continue to adjust, and we'll continue to stay flexible along this journey. But at the same time, we'll keep educating you in terms of what it is that we are learning. Again, I'll let you know, there are going to be surprises. This is January. We're still hoping that we can maybe bring something to the voters of Sioux Falls by November. But there are going to be surprises as we go, and as well as opportunities. And we're going to continue to inform the public. One of the things that we've discussed, and Councilor Jameson, I'll defer to you and your team, even though this meeting here may not be as exciting, we believe that over the next 30 to 60 days, there's going to be so much going on with this particular project that we may actually ask to come back and meet even more than just once every month, and maybe meet maybe once every couple of weeks. We know that there's been an inherent message from you good folks on the City Council that you want the public to know what's going on. Rather than maybe trying to squeeze everything into one long meeting, we may ask for your permission to meet every couple of weeks, but we'll work with you on that as we go. And one of the things also that we're really energized about is that the architect and engineering team, Sink Homes, they've done this before. They are also going to be working to put together a really defined project plan, and part of that project plan involves communication with the public, going out, not only engaging the public, meeting with the public, getting questions from the public, and that'll also help us educate the 160,000 people of this great city what it is that we're looking to do. I guess I just ask all of you just help us stay on track. This is one of those things that if we do get distracted along the way, I believe that it won't ultimately help the process at all. In fact, I think it'll ultimately harm it. Again, we're in no rush. We're in no rush to get this done, but it is going to be a really difficult journey, and it's one that if we can stay focused along the way, I think that it'll just help us get this project done. Our next event center update is again on February 14th. One of the things too that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that we had a wonderful year in 2010 in Sioux Falls. Financially, we had a very, very good year. And we also want to come to you and provide you with some of the results of 2010, not only in terms of some of the accomplishments that we made in terms of projects, but also financially. Because again, I think that ultimately, as Councilor Brown has stated a couple of times, there's all those topics that just came up on the screen, whether it be location and parking and things like that. But I ultimately believe Councilor Brown is right on the money. It's going to come down to money. It's going to come down to how are we going to fund this? Not only how are we going to build it, but how are we going to operate it? And I think that those are some of the things, and so those are some of the dynamics that we're going to have to express to the people of Sioux Falls to ultimately gain their confidence. And we want to begin to do that within the next 30 to 60 days. So, Councilor Brown, you have my word that we will do that. Again, I thank you for your time today. We will have that next meeting here on February 14th, and we certainly want to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Any questions on the presentation on the Event Center? Councilor Brown.
And I don't know, Mayor, if this is for you or for Mark Cotter, but one of the slides talked about travel to similar facilities. Does similar mean event centers as proposed with the 12,000 permanent seats, or does similar mean in terms of populations of communities, or does it mean similar in terms of venues downtown or an outskirts of the community?
And that's not meant to be flippant, Councilor Brown, but I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
And Mark, maybe one of the things that I think that Sync Homes Detlefs, what they will do is they'll also provide us advice in terms of facilities that we should go visit with to try to gain some perspective on all of that you just discussed.
Because if I may interrupt you just for
Please.
a moment, I was disappointed in their answer when I asked for similar facilities, and they're telling us facilities in Las Vegas. That's not similar. So I was disappointed in their answer in that, and then I hope that in these visits we look at communities like ours. I don't think seeing venues in Las Vegas is going to satisfy this council or the community.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair, Councilor Brown. The only reason you may want to go to a facility in Las Vegas is that it may be structurally, or
Sure.
maybe the design,
Yes.
or maybe some components of the new event center would be better portrayed if we go to that site.
I respect that.
For example, one of the things that we're intrigued by is that we know that if it's a 12,000 sellable seat event center, that we're not always going to use all 12,000 seats. One of the things that they've talked to us about is the dynamic in terms of making it appear smaller, having it either curtains or other structures make it appear smaller. So whether we can see that in Vegas or in Fargo or whatever, I'm going to let them tell us that, Councilor Brown. But I agree with you. I think that, and I also think that the only way we're going to sell this to the public is if we truly do compare and contrast facilities in cities just like ours. And Mark, I don't know if you've got any comments as well.
I'll probably just add 3 more points. One of the things that we've been advised is really facilities that have been built beyond 10 years ago from a technology standpoint are outdated. And so,
Sure.
Just based on trying to find venues of that 12,000 sellable seat size facility, we may have to travel farther, like to Las Vegas, because they may have the most recent build, the most recent technology.
Right.
As we build out. One of the other things, too, is we'll have to make several very rapid and thoughtful decisions as we start to program this. And quite honestly, sometimes the best way to do that is to actually see it in hand and then be able to make a decision. Like the mayor had mentioned, some of these Many of the venues in our market will be of both sides. Smaller venues will want to find ways to curtain it off, and some that'll be use the whole facility. So one of the comments that they talk about is, where do you put the suites? Do you put the suites in the middle between the two concourses, so you have this lower bowl of seats and then the suites, and then another bowl of seats above that, or if it's a large facility, do you put the suites on top? So there is, again, a lot of those just rapid and thoughtful decisions that you have to make, but really do change the type of facility that you ultimately select. So I would say from the venue size, technology, and then just overall layout, very key.
Will we still be examining to make sure that 12,000 seats is the right fit for Sioux Falls, or is that determined?
Counselor, I think that's a very valid question. I think that when we get back things like the estimated cost of the facility, again, we've mentioned in our early discussions is that we believe for about $99.5 million we can build this. But it may come back differently. It may come back 85. It may come back 110. I'm not quite sure. And that's why we've hired the experts to do that. I think that'll help play a role. I think also the economic impact study is also going to help play a role in terms of helping us analyze some of these things. Councilor Brown, you've been very, very clear, and I commend you for it in terms of operating a facility. I know full well that a 12,000 sellable seat event center will be cheaper to maintain than a 15,000 sellable seat arena, or vice versa. A 12,000 sellable seat event center will be more expensive to maintain than a 10,000 sellable seat event center. So, Councilor Brown, I don't think that ultimately it's been finalized, but I did want to start the dialogue in the spirit of trying to gain some confidence in not only you, Councilor Brown, but all the other folks that this is a worthy project to at least bring forth to the people of Sioux Falls. You were kind enough to help fund at least $500,000 so that we could continue this dialogue. But ultimately, I think right now we're working with these architects and engineers and these construction managers at risk on the premise that it will be a 12,000 sellable seat event center. But again, nothing has come to the vote of the people to date. And it won't until all of you good women and men decide that it should.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have one.
Councilor Jameson.
When, maybe for Mark or whoever on the project financial update, on the additional expenses could include and go over and above the $500,000, do you, the mechanism that would be required to get additional funds, what is that?
Same thing that we've always discussed, Councilor Jameson, and it's not changed. And in fact, I think you were incredibly clear in terms of what those mechanisms are, but I will repeat them for you. I have said time and time again that if we need additional funds on this particular project, that we couldn't do that alone. We would have to come to the folks of the City Council and ask for additional funds. You would consider their merits at that time, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And then we would then either utilize those funds if approved or not utilize any additional expenses if not approved. But what we would do is we would come to the City Council, explain what it is that we need the additional funds for. Today, some of the things that we've talked about include traveling to similar facilities, additional legal. One of the things that Councilor Jameson, I think you actually brought up, and I think it was a really good idea, involved naming rights. There are so many things that you can put a name on and actually get private funds for. And those are some of the things that I think we would like to look into. And there's actually firms that you can hire to do just that. Maybe not even just for the event center, but one of the things that we're intrigued by, Councilor Jameson, is maybe even bringing on a naming rights individual or team to look at all of the other facilities that we have here in Sioux Falls, the Washington Pavilion, the zoo, things like that, and ask them for their advice. And maybe we could begin to even sell off some of the naming rights and some of those things to help us find additional funding sources. So to quickly answer your question, Councilor Jameson, our goal would be if we need additional money, we will come to the City Council, we'll ask for your support, and hopefully that would be approved, and if not, we would not have the ability to spend additional funds on this project.
Do I have it right that it would be at the end of January is when you would get the proposal back and you would approve the economic and development impact analysis? That's when you would award that a contract. So that'd be the final expense, right? That's when you would really know if you've got any extra money or if you're
No, I think there's potential for additional expense throughout this entire journey. And again, we don't know. I think that's where, for example, the architect and engineering firm, as they begin to get more and more engaged in this process, they will also educate us on, well, Mayor Huther, you forgot this, or oh, Mayor Huther and team, you may want to consider this. So no, I think there's the real potential to have additional expenses up until the time that we could maybe even vote on this.
Okay, right. Any other questions? Looks like we're good. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
All right, we'll move on to our next presentations with Don Kearney, Recreation Needs Assessment Process. Welcome, Don.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation, and we appreciate the opportunity to present our Recreation Needs Assessment Process to you. We wanted to give you an outline of an effort that we've undertaken over the last several weeks. With me today is Alicia Luther. Alicia is our Recreation Program Manager, and she's really been tasked with implementing this project. Alicia, if you just wave. Replaced Barb Hermanson a few months ago. And then we also have Dave Fisher, who's also obviously involved on a day-to-day basis. Wanted to share a little bit about this process because we're pretty excited about the opportunity to gain some additional public input on the recreation needs of the city residents. And you might ask, if you're not been involved in a needs assessment, what does it consist of, what is it all about? In our proposed process that we've got here, we've got about 6,000 mailed questionnaires that would be sent to Sioux Falls residents through random sampling. We would really inquire about a wide variety of the recreational needs that the community would have and their interests and their opinions about those programs and services. The results of the survey will be statistically valid based on a 12% return rate of those 6,000 questionnaires for a margin of error of 3 to 5%. And it really is a great planning tool for us as management of the department, the administration, city council members, park board, and just the general community to be able to see what people are saying about the needs and interests as it relates to recreation. And then it allows us obviously to focus on capital and operational priorities based on the results of the survey. We did perform a survey back in 2000, 99-2000. A similar survey was conducted. We have increased the sample size because of the growth of our community to better reflect and capture the information from the community. And it really provided a variety of recommendations as it relates to the needs in the community, things that we ought to focus on as a department. I provided the executive summary as part of your attachments to this particular agenda item for your review, so you can get a feel of what those recommendations were back in 2000. And we really use it a lot. So why does it need to be updated? One of the reasons is that we've implemented a lot of the recommendations, or at least tried to implement some of the recommendations from the survey in 2000. One of the things that we do need, though, is we need some new information. 99-2000, obviously that's been quite some time ago, and the demographics of the community has changed a lot as well, not only with the population, but just the demographics in general have changed as well. And the other thing is that we would like to also be able to benchmark this survey, the survey results in 2011, with those survey results that we received in 2000, so we can see what's changed between 2000 and 2011. We think that'll be valuable. Who will perform the needs assessment? The same group, essentially, that performed it in 2000 will perform it in 2011. Management Learning Laboratories is the firm that we used the last time. The president is Ananda Mitra. Ananda is out of North Carolina and really is considered a specialist in recreation needs assessment. He's presented at several national conferences on Parks and Recreation about how to properly conduct needs assessment, and so we're very pleased to be able to have him doing the survey again. And one of the things that is important as we work to finalize the questionnaire, we really want to encourage folks to fill out the questionnaire. I know we all get a lot of that junk mail from time to time, but the more people fill those out, the better the results will be and the better information we'll have to be able to plan for the future of our recreational needs. And the other thing I'd like to share with you a little bit is our timeline for implementation. This week, Ananda will be in town conducting focus group meetings. Many of you probably were invited to a specific focus group. We want to talk to the sports folks. We want to talk to the folks that do special events in our community. We want to talk to the folks that maybe have disabilities. We want to know what their needs are. A variety of different focus groups will be held, but then we'll also, as Michelle mentioned, we will have that public meeting focus group on Thursday of this week at the main library at 8 o'clock for anybody that would like to attend and provide input to Ananda. Ananda will be meeting and conducting those, facilitating those meetings and conducting those interviews with the people that are in those focus groups, and staff will not be present so that people obviously want their frank comments, they want their direct comments about the programs and services that are available in the community. And so we will not be present at those meetings, but Ananda will. And so I think he'll get some very good information from that. So he'll be here this week, and he'll conduct those meetings. And then on February 4th, we hope to be able to finalize the questionnaire and then ultimately get that sent out to the community. When the questionnaire goes out, it'll actually have a cover letter on it that will go along the questionnaire along with a self-addressed stamped envelope for people to fill out the questionnaire and return it to us. And so we're hopeful that it'll be easy for them to fill out, and we found that we've had some pretty good results doing it that way. The preliminary results should be back by March 25th. A final report should be available to us by April 15th. And then in late April, Ananda will be back into Sioux Falls to present a final report of the findings that he had from the needs assessment. And then the other thing that we'll be doing is that if you didn't happen to get a survey through random sampling and you still wanted to take the survey, you'll be able to go online. There will be a link on our website for you to be able to go online and take that survey, because obviously not everybody's going to get a survey. And if you want to, but we do value their input, so they'll be able to do that online. And then periodically, we'll also be able to run reports to get the online results of those questionnaires as well. And so then the other piece to this is that as part of the package, Management Learning Laboratories will also provide us with a software package called CompuRec, which will allow us to manipulate the data to be able to determine whether men are more interested in this particular activity than women, or there's a certain period of time that people would like to participate on it based on their age, for example. So it allows you to answer ask additional questions to generate a more specific answer to your question you might have, so that we can really hone in on if we're going to offer a program in the evening, well, who should be the folks that we should target it towards. And so it'll allow us to do that as well. And so with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions along with Alicia and Dave.
Any questions for Councilor Brown?
Thanks, Don. I always like surveys, so I have a couple of questions. Can you talk a little bit how they will make sure that it's representative of our population in terms of neighborhoods, especially income levels? Because I would suspect that lower income probably, in many cases, are heavier users of some of our parks.
Yeah, it will be distributed by zip code, and so we want to make sure that we have a good geographic distribution of those surveys. We'll also, obviously it'll be random, so that it'll be available to, or it's done random, so it's statistically valid. And so I think as a result of Ananda's work historically, we've got good representation by each zip code, and that's how we'll be able to glean the information by area of town.
Okay. And then what do they do they do some follow-up to make sure they boost the completion? Or is it just a mail out and don't do anything else?
Yeah, that's a great question. What will happen is that if we don't feel like we've received enough surveys, then a follow-up mailer will be sent out again to make sure that we get enough of the survey responses to make sure that we have statistically valid information. So yeah, it'll be a follow-up. The last time I want to say that we had 17% participation rate. So 12 is the goal, and last time we received 17.
Last time, when we did the performance indicator ones, we had great participation, but I think it was in large part because of the follow-up that was done with that. So I would encourage you to make sure they do that. And then finally, is there an executive summary of that 2001 that you could also throw against it, what was completed as a result of that, so we can see that?
Sure.
I'm not looking for the entire document. I'm looking for a page or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's as a newcomer, I just elaborate a little bit on that question, is that as a newcomer to Sioux Falls in 2005, it was a very useful piece of information for me to learn more about what the needs in the community were. And we really, obviously, we've pursued a recreation center, we've pursued an indoor aquatic center, which were both happen to be recommendations of this study. And so, yeah, it is very valuable, and I think we'll be able to give you some good information about
Don.
the results of that.
Councilor Aguilar. Councilor Uppenbach.
I wanted to continue that conversation about the indoor rec center and the indoor aquatic center. If you look at the executive summary from the 2000 survey, 73% of the people that participated asked for that rec center, and then it went down in a blaze of glory right at the time that you came, Don. So that was part of the reason that this was so much on my mind that I talked about it ahead of time, is that we have to have people understand that they need to participate, that this is something that is that critical. Can you talk about how you use that information just a little bit more in terms of planning? I mean, there are things that you've done, I know specifically. Can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah, one of the examples was that folks wanted to see more adult-oriented activities from 7 to 10 p.m. During the week. And so some of the programs that came out of that were the Kickball League. We started the Kickball League. It started with 35 teams, blossomed to 142 at its peak. I think we're at 135 teams now. That's an example of where the survey said there was a need for that program, and obviously the demand was really there as a result of providing that program. Another program that we've recently implemented has been the dodgeball program that we do at the community centers. And that there again, it's another adult program that has been pretty successful in our first year, this past year, and we anticipate that the participation in that program will be very popular as well. And so that's another example. One of the other things that we wanted to do was provide more direct mail advertising about the programs and activities that we offer. And so we now do that. Everybody in Sioux Falls gets a summer activities guide and a winter activities guide in the mail. And so it really covers a broad and a diverse array of recommendations, everything from facility maintenance to programming to advertising and promotion. And so, again, it's been a very helpful not only to me, but all of our staff in the office.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Don? I have a couple, Don, if I could. Maybe you covered it in the slide, but you're doing, did I see 6,000 mailers?
That's correct.
And did you tell us how much this was?
No, I didn't. The total dollar amount for management learning laboratories is $21,000.
In 2000, did we do the same kind of number Do you remember that needs assessment?
Actually, because of the growth in the population, Anand is recommending that we increase it from 4,500 to 6,000 to get a better sample.
And is it just Parks and Rec? Is this needs assessment citywide? I mean, as far as will questions only pertain to Parks and Rec, or there is?
It is related to Parks and Recreation because we want to know how they view our services, but it will also just be a general interest question of, do you believe that quality maintained parks add to the quality of life? You know, is it important to you to be able to have well-maintained parks? And so there will be some other general questions about recreation as well. Which activities do you most participate in, for example? We'll get there, the amount of use that the citizens have out there too. What do they value? Which ones do they use most often? And so it won't be just specifically about the department operations, but trying to get a flavor of what the community participates in as well is another example of a more overall assessment of their needs.
I was just thinking that if we had, if we're doing a survey like this, it seems like we should ask a lot of other questions and even double the number of surveys going out. Maybe that what happened in 2000 was the sampling was so small that we all thought that indoor rec center was the number one thing they wanted, and the next would be this and this and that. We went and did the vote, and it, wasn't the case. Maybe there were other things that factored into that failure, but I'm just thinking that if we're going to do a needs assessment of the community, we should probably, Mayor, really do a lot more than just the Parks and Rec, but maybe, and I never saw the one in 2000, but it seems like that gave us a better roadmap of moving forward citywide instead of just with parks. And if we could get other departments to all share in the cost and triple up the number on surveys, maybe the data that we'd get back would be just absolutely valuable.
One of the challenges that you have whenever you do surveys is that you want them to be statistically valid. And sending out more surveys does not mean that it will be more statistically valid than if you send less surveys. And that's why I think Don is utilizing this expert to help him identify what is the right number. The risk that you have is that, another risk that you have is that if you make the survey too long, then you have the propensity to not fill it out. So you're trying to find that balance between getting the information that you want so that you could accurately portray the needs and wants of the survey person versus getting more and more information. And I think that's why we're relying on this expert to help us with this. Just harking you back to your statistics class in college, Counselor Jameson, you try to find that statistical formula that gives you all the data that you need with using the fewest number of samples to make that happen, and I think that's what we're doing.
I don't want to get into an argument here, but some time ago when we were discussing this allocation of $500,000, I thought that a needs assessment for the city was probably a better idea than spending $500 because we could really determine what the community wants. In fact, here's what the Parks Department is doing because they want to know what the public wants. I just think if we could have more topics discussed, maybe it doesn't have to be as long, but I think we could get a nice short list of what the public wants with a larger group. But that's just me. But Councilor Brown, you've got something?
I would follow up, Councilor Jameson, with it. When we did the performance-based budgeting surveys, I think they were very valuable and they gave a broad perspective. And frankly, for about the same amount of money, gave us a broad perspective of what the community thought, what it wanted, and that's a valid point. The other thing, more for discussion with the council, to Councilor Erpenbach's point, with the 73% saying that they agreed with a multi-use rec center and 65% with the aquatic center, I think we need to think long and hard about that event center vote and when it is positioned in November at a time when there's no general election, what kind of turnout are we going to have? And I think we have to consider that very carefully because I think that the special election was very tough on those issues.
Yeah, I would agree. That certainly, as Councilor Jameson said, there were a lot of factors that played into that. And Councilor Jameson, I can just add to that, I'm looking at the survey. It is online with our agenda. It is 4 pages long. So it's front and back 2 pages, and it's single-space typed. That's going to be daunting for people. I mean, if you get your 12%, that's going to be awesome numbers. It really will be. But it's very comprehensive, and I think the questions are really good. I think it's, and of course it has gardening in it, so I'm really glad of that. Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just worried that if we get too broad on this, we're going to lose the effectiveness of the focal point of that questionnaire. And I believe the advantage of a specialized questionnaire is obvious to me. And if I remember right from stats class, I don't even think you need 12% at this number here to arrive at an accurate conclusion. So if you get 12%, and I think that other survey you were talking about came back at a 30, didn't it? The customer satisfaction. So, folks from Sioux Falls, I think they'll rise up to meet our need down here. But you bet, Don, I think that's a good idea to focus on this. It's been 12 years. And, the community's changing a little bit. Demographics are changing, so it's time.
If I could,
Sure.
Council Chair, the beauty of it, the reason why we're using the same company again is because we felt like the survey that we got in 2000 was very, very valuable. And it was just right on point. It covered a broad array of services that we provide. And to be honest with you, we wanted just an updated planning tool like we have now with the one in 2000 is just dated. And we've changed as a community. And so if we get the same thing we got in 2000, I'd be very, very happy with those results.
Don, when do those results come back?
We should have the final report by the end of April. And we should be able to make that presentation as to what the community thought.
Very good. Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Don.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a, let's see, Public Services Committee following this meeting, but before that, we are going into an executive session, and I need the room to be cleared for us to execute that. It may take a few minutes. It may take 30, but we need some time, and we'll be starting the Public Services Committee following that. I do need a motion to go in executive session. Councilor Litz.
Mr. Chair, then I would make a motion to adjourn into executive session for personnel issues under South Dakota Code 1-25-21.
I would second that motion. Erpenbach.
We have a motion by Councilor Litz and seconded by Councilor Erpenbach to go into executive session at 4:52. All those in favor say aye.